Hello everyone, and since we've had a fair amount of leaks and spoilers lately, but in this video, I'd like to take a completely different view and tell you why these leaks are so important to every Digital Circus universe fan. And the first and one of the most recent leaks will be a picture of Pomni, Gangle, and Regatha. But the most interesting is the description of this leak. Look out Pomni, she's right behind you. That's what Gooseworx wanted to tell us, and after reading this post, I became really uncomfortable. I had the feeling that these words are not Gooseworx at all, but the character who looks directly at Pomni. And as you might guess, I'm talking about Regatha right now. Perhaps this is how our doll intended to warn Pomni of the impending danger. And judging by the face of Pomni at that moment, Regatha was able to do everything in time. The face of Pomni looks very strange. On the one hand, you can see she's very scared, but the other half of her face shows us surprise. It is as if Pomni does not understand what her friend wants to say to her and does not understand who to take a shit. And now we come to the main character of our leak. Gangle. It is this depressed girl who poses the main threat to Pomni. And if you think about the pilot episode, where Gangle looked sad all the time, this leak is the reverse. Gangle sneaks quietly to Pomni with a very intimidating look on his face. It seems that Gangle wants to hurt our main character. But why would she do that? The answer is hidden in the same pilot episode. Remember how brutally Jax bullied Gangle, and perhaps to get rid of this, Gangle had to turn to Cain for help. As we all know, Pomni was the main cause of Cain's stress in the pilot episode, and perhaps in exchange for her protection, Cain asked Gangle to make Pomni stop quietly living in a digital circus. And as we all know, the more stress a character experiences, the faster his final song gets. Or maybe Gangle just wanted to scare Pomni into some game without pursuing any malice. I would also like to tell you about another leak. Still remember the scene between Jax and Zooble, and this leak refers to that very scene. But in this image, we clearly see a satisfied Jax face who is clearly not going to do anything bad. Zooble, as usual, looks very haughty, but what's most interesting is that the Zooble suit is different from what we saw in the pilot episode. To be honest, I think this leak is just a reference to the pilot episode and also shows us a new Zooble outfit. But something serious in this leak was definitely not hidden by the creators. I think many of you have already seen the Pomni room, but not everyone understands how important this location will be in the new episode. And despite the fact that we have been shown a relatively long time ago room, I would still like to talk to you in more detail about this location, because she's hiding more than you think. But in this video, I will try to explain to you why this post is the most important news before the new episode, and try to explain when the next episode will be released. Let's take a look at this amazing Pomni room as much as possible, because it hides a lot of secrets that are worth talking about. First of all, I would like to talk about the mirror, which fits very well into the interior of this colorful room. If you remember the Kaufmo room, you won't find a mirror there, and it was strange to me, while there's nothing wrong with it in this room. But have you noticed how strangely placed it is? Usually the mirror is hung on the wall or placed parallel to the wall, but in the case of our Pomni, it is placed in such a way that you can see the whole room from any angle, and I think that if you stand at the right angle, you can see yourself. But what is the purpose of this? Remember the fragment from the pilot episode where Pomni was running away from the abstracted Kaufmo and saw the mirror. Now remember the horror with which she looked at the reflection. And also in one of the old leaks, Pomni looks into the mirror too, but only there her look is so crazy that even I got a little creeped out watching it. And most likely the mirror in Pomni's room is placed so that she can always see herself, so that she always knows where she is. And these thoughts would slowly and stealthily drive her insane. So what if Pomni decided to look into it deliberately? In which case she would realize what surrounds her, which would also drive her crazier every day. Or maybe it was just for the sake of beauty. But we don't see anything special in the reflection of the mirror, except for one detail. I'm talking about the chandelier. In the pilot episode, I couldn't find a single scene or frame in which this interior object appeared. But what does that tell us? Remember how Cain showed that the digital circus has both the sun and the moon, which means we have day and night. But I was sure that the lighting in the big top depended on that as well. Apparently, I was wrong. Most likely, the main room has some windows that illuminate the area of the digital circus tent. However, I didn't notice any windows in the characters' rooms, and there's no chandelier in Kaufmo's room. Maybe it disappears the moment the character turns into an abstracted monster. And before I was sure that the characters, if they are in a normal mental state, can only be in the room when they are sleeping. But then again, they don't need to sleep because they're just digital copies. But let's talk from the perspective that they need sleep just like us. Maybe during sleep the chandelier in each room is automatically turned off at certain times, but during the day when the characters are just having fun or doing their own thing, the chandelier is always on. And just look at it. It's really very detailed and beautifully done. And those candle flame lights make me admire this amazing quality work more and more. You may also have noticed a strange cube with a single letter B. If you look closely, you will see that it is definitely not a coincidence, as the letter is only on one of the 6 sides. And this mystery has already driven many Twitter users crazy. Let's discuss some of the theories surrounding this mysterious letter B. Of course, everyone is wondering what it stands for. One user jokingly suggested that it stands for Pomni, and that's very funny and entertaining, but I'm sure this thing really belongs to some other character, because if it was Pomni, we'd probably be shown another letter as a reference. Of all the characters we've seen so far, only Bubble matches the description of the owner, but that was very strange, which means someone else owns it. If none of the known characters of the digital circus has a name that starts with the letter B, then I'm 99% sure that one of these new characters will definitely appear in the new episode. Maybe it will be this beautiful princess, and her name could be Bella. Or on the contrary, this toy once belonged to one of those characters who became an abstracted monster. Maybe it was our good old yellow dog named Bobby. There is also a theory that this toy belongs to Pomni, and that it is indeed the first letter of her name, but not the one she got in the digital circus, but her real name. I'm sure Kane knows the names of all the people who come to his digital circus, but why does he give out all the new names? Most likely it is so that they can completely abandon their former lives and only know themselves as they appear in the digital circus. And in this case, maybe Pomni's real name is Pomni, and this person wasn't even joking when he wrote that? And of course, there were a lot of jokes about the Barcelona Football Club. And if we start from the theory that this is a toy of a new character, I noticed another fact that supports this theory. Take a closer look at the toys on the sides of the mirror. I think many of you have noticed that one of these pyramids is assembled and the second is completely destroyed. If there really is a new character, their pyramid will most likely be destroyed. And now I will explain why. Look at Pomni, and just by looking at her, you can see that she is in complete despondency and depression. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. And I'm sure that in such a state, she hardly wants to play with anything. What if a new character actually comes to visit her and they sit down and talk? Except that Pomni is no longer able to play with anything, but someone new could possibly bring not only a children's pyramid for her to play with, but also this mysterious cube with an even more mysterious letter. Don't you think that sounds like the truth? A small percentage of people have also noticed another of the oddities. Look first at the reflection in the mirror and then at the wall itself. Now let's go down a little lower and notice a strange object lying on the floor. If you remember the scene in the dormitory, you will immediately notice a lot of paintings hanging on the walls, and the size of their outline is exactly the same as this object. I agree with you that the color is different, but we're talking about the Pomni room and it should all be in red and blue colors. What if this fallen painting shows something similar to what we saw in the Kaufmo room, and could it mean that Pomni has already started an irreversible process and her mind is starting to go crazy? And is there a possibility that we will see this in the new episode? Now it's time to talk about the sweetest thing we've been shown, and of course it's about our amazing Pomni. But in this picture, the condition of the Pomni clearly leaves a lot to be desired. Let's talk about this spoiler as one of the shots of the new episode. If our mini teaser and this scene will open the new episode, in this case we realize that already after the end of the pilot episode, Pomni started some mental changes and we are not as interested in this as the next option. What if all these events take place in the middle of the second episode? First we saw Pomni sleeping sweetly in her bed, and then comes the moment she wakes up. And if it's a digital circus, then no one has to rush anywhere or wake up to an alarm clock. That means all the characters get a good night's sleep and remember themselves after a good night's sleep. Even if you have a terrible day planned, you'll feel great right after you wake up. But here we see a completely different picture. From the very beginning of the day, Pomni shows with her whole appearance that she is in a borderline state and ready to go crazy. And I'm sure that these fragments are taken from about 12-16 minutes of the new episode, which means that someone has already managed to mess with Pomni's mental state to the point where she feels terrible just looking at her room. Maybe it was Kane on an unpleasant assignment, or maybe Jax's bullying has affected Pomni that much. Or maybe it's just the thought of going out that keeps her in a state of depression all day. How long do you think she's been there? 5 minutes? Half an hour? Or an hour? Or maybe all day? I'm sure the answers to all these questions will be revealed in the new episode we're about to talk about. More precisely, we will not talk about the new episode, but about its release date, because now my confidence in the fact that the event will happen very soon is getting stronger every day. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and don't forget to give me feedback. Bye-bye everybody, bye-bye.